Now, something rather different for you in today's perspective. If you've ever picked up a paintbrush, I'm not talking about decorating, I'm talking about really trying your hand at art. You will know just how hard it can be. If we're talking watercolours, you might have tried the classics, perhaps some fruit, perhaps some flowers, perhaps, or even a landscape. But a new book encourages readers to use the art as a means of self-expression, guiding viewers, if you like, through basic watercolour techniques to adapt them to share their personal experiences. Well, with us is the artist and its author as well, Jessie Canellos-Weiner, who lives here in Paris. She joins us now. Got the book here as well. Tell us a little bit about what you mean, the art as a means of self-expression. What does that mean?
Thank you, Stuart. Well, you know, I think a lot of people start art and they love it in school, but you might find a discouraging art teacher who discourages you from really losing yourself in the process. And so I think this book is a really good way to brush up on some basic skills and some understandings to lose yourself once again in a healthy form of escapism.
Oh, it's a wonderful way of thinking about it. I was terrible at art school, I have to say, so it sounds really good. You've also brought in some of the actual paintings, which are in the book as well, which is really nice to see the actual work as well. It's great to see that. Let's show some examples of what you're talking about. We're going to have a look at some of the pages. We've got some fruits, and this is about recognising, isn't it, the colours in the colour wheel. Tell us about these images and what the idea is.
Yes, so color wheels aren't just ways for art teachers to torture their students, but they can really also be a really important part of your art practice. So I like to say that making art is all about choices, and so you see here there are different ways that you can approach color. The first one is using all the colors in the wheel, and the second one is about the analogous colors, which are, it's almost like taking a piece of pie out of the color wheel. So these are ways to change the emotion of a piece or to push yourself to try out more experimental approaches to making art as well. So once you know a little bit about watercolor technique and different ways to adapt color, then the more range that you can have in your work as well.
And in this second page, it goes on, doesn't it, to show
Yes.
even more different ways you can do that.
Yes. There's a monochromatic approach. Of course, when we're using something like blue, that speaks of specific emotion. And then there are complementary colors as well, which can be used to create the most impactful and high contrast version. There's also the tetradic color wheel, which almost draws a rectangle on top of the color wheel as well. And this is a way to create high contrast with also having a little bit of a harmony as well.
Let's show some other pages as well. This is about, it's still to do with colour, isn't it? Which, of course, is vital and perhaps the most important thing when we're talking watercolours. But let's look at this next page. Tell us about it. This is about the colour palette as well, isn't it?
Yes, so I talk a lot about, all of these choices that you can potentially make and how color can impact the overall message of your piece. And so here, down below, I just did a sketch of three very Parisian pigeons, eternal source of inspiration for me. And on the bottom, I use all of the colors, and then I move into how the same watercolor changes just by using different color palettes. Okay, so on the next page
Let's have a look at the next page then. Yeah,
at the next
see
page
all the different colours
as
there
well.
and the different way of...
Yes, so as you can see, the first choice is a little bit too strong. It looks a little apocalyptic, so I wouldn't recommend using warm colors for this case. The second one is monochrome, we could say. Red, I think, is a strong choice, but I think the final most effective version for this particular image is the bottom right corner where I'm using red and blue. It speaks of the subject matter at hand. So once you are able to identify, okay, taking a look at all of these, which one is the most effective, then you can make a mental note moving forward where I think a lot of people think you sit down, you create work, but at the end of the day, the more you know about art theory, art history, color theory, the more you feel empowered to make these choices and understand why something works and why it doesn't.
I love this last particular one so much because it really does show, doesn't it, how your mood can, you can kind of see the mood of the picture just by the different ways of the
Exactly.
colour, isn't it?
And sometimes just the choice of color makes it easier to understand as well.
And how do you, when you sit down to paint something, is it the self-expression bit of it that comes first, or is it the outline of the drawing bit that comes first, or...?
You know, I think being an artist, I often feel overwhelmed with a strike of inspiration. It's kind of like being hit by lightning sometimes. And so that's the moment, I talk about this in the book as well, where I do a really quick gestural sketch to put whatever it is I'm feeling on paper. And that's, because that's a fleeting moment as well. And then from there I can start thinking about the color choices and everything. But it's not just a moment where I sit down and I bang something out. There's often several processes of revisions and sketching and making all of these micro choices along the way.
As you said, Paris and France sort of features quite prominently in your books. I see you've got one here of croissant as well. Tell us,
Yes,
hold
yes.
this one up. Tell us about this.
So I lived in France for 16 years. I moved here as an au pair, and I think very quickly I realized that this France wasn't exactly the one I had in my mind, and so I had to find humor in my everyday life. So this is the anatomy of a good croissant. This is an exercise I did with my students. Not all croissants are good, as we know. And so here I break down, okay, these are the things to look out for. You know, you can pull the top off, and the inside is eggy, and et cetera, et cetera.
Beautiful, very nicely done. Where does this come from in you? I mean, have you always been an artist, even from back at school?
Yes. My mom took notes from when I was a kid, and it said, Jessie loves cutting things up and pasting them back together. So I've always been chronically creative, I'd say, and I've been a professional illustrator for 10, 15 years now.
Right, and can anyone do it? I mean, as I said to you, art was not my strongest point at school,
Yes,
I have to
yes.
say. I mean, is it something that you can train anyone to do, or does it
I
really
think
come
so.
from the heart?
I think so. I think at the end of the day, if you trust the process and you like doing it enough, then I think that in itself is worth finding yourself investing more time into. And so if you lose yourself in something, if it's healthy, why not do it? And if it feels good, it's not about the final outcome. It's more about the process of losing yourself in something like art.
And why the book? I mean, is it a way of helping other people to become interested and excited by art?
I think so. I think, sometimes we're afraid of what we don't understand. And so watercolor is often neglected as something that's more of a preparatory part of traditional painting, entre guillemets, but I think it's a way just to share my story and help people tell their own using watercolor.
Well, thanks for bringing them in. I've loved to seeing it's great, isn't it, to actually see the original painting and then it transformed into the book cover. I mean, I think that kind of shows it off really nicely, doesn't it? Thinking in Watercolour, the book is called, a daily practice to unlock your creativity and discover your inner artist. Just published. Thank you very much for coming in and sharing it with us on the programme. Jessie Canellos-Viner there. Lives in Paris and wonderful art. Nice to see. Thanks very much.
Thank you.